Rain poured down like a flood on the streets of Chicago, turning neon lights into hazy streaks. Inside a sleek Bentley, 43-year-old white billionaire Ethan Caldwell gripped the steering wheel tightly, his deep blue eyes clouded with anger and despair. Just a few hours ago, he had been at the pinnacle of power, standing in his magnificent glass-walled office on the 50th floor of Caldwell Enterprises, where he ran a multi-billion-dollar financial empire. But one phone call from the doctor had shattered everything, Mr. Caldwell. "I'm sorry. The results confirm you're infertile. There's no way to change that." The word infertile echoed in his mind like a death sentence, tearing apart his dream of a family, of a legacy bearing the Caldwell name. A man who had always been in control of million-dollar deals and the minutiae of daily life was now helpless in the face of his own body. Ethan slammed his foot on the gas. The car sped through slick roads. He didn't register the blaring horns or the glaring headlights coming from the opposite direction. His mind was lost in darkness, where memories of his father, a stern man who had always demanded he carry on the Caldwell legacy, resurfaced like a curse. "You must leave something that endures." "Ethan," his father once said, voice as cold as steel. But now, that enduring thing had slipped from his grasp. Rain pounded on the windshield, mixing with the thundering of his heart. He didn't see the turn ahead or hear the metal shriek against the guardrail as the car lost control. A deafening crash rang out, and Ethan's world faded to black. A few blocks away, Amara Johnson, a 35-year-old black woman, was driving her beat-up Honda through the rain. She had just finished a long day at Southside High, where she taught literature and mentored students facing poverty and violence. Amara was no stranger to hardship. She grew up in the projects of Englewood, lost her mother to cancer at 12, and her father disappeared soon after. But she had clawed her way up, earned a college scholarship, and became a teacher, carrying her mother's dream of creating a haven for kids in the neighborhood. She also ran a community center, offering tutoring and counseling for teens, steering them away from gang life. Tonight, she only wanted to get home and curl up on the couch with a book, but fate had other plans. As Amara crossed a bridge, she saw flames erupting from an overturned car. Without hesitation, she pulled over and jumped out her sneakers, slipping on the wet pavement. The cold wind cut into her skin, but she didn't care. She climbed over mangled metal and yanked the crumpled door with strength. Inside, a man was unconscious, blood trickling from a head wound. "Hey, wake up!" Amara shouted, dragging him from the driver's seat. The stench of gasoline filled her lungs, and her heartbeat raced. She heard the crackle of fire and felt its heat on her back as she pulled him away. Seconds later, the car exploded into a ball of flame. Amara clutched the stranger, panting, heart pounding from adrenaline. She didn't know who he was, but when his blue eyes flickered open, staring at her with a mix of pain and disbelief, she felt a strange connection. Sirens wailed, slicing through the storm. As EMTs loaded the man onto a stretcher, Amara stood there, drenched, watching. A firefighter asked for her name, but she shook her head. "It doesn't matter. He's alive. That's what matters." She got back in her car and drove off, not knowing her courageous act had just altered the course of one man's life and her own. At the hospital, Ethan awoke with a dull ache across his body. Harsh white lights burned his eyes, and the antiseptic smell stung his nose. He heard a doctor speaking of minor injuries and lucky to be alive. But the first image in his mind wasn't the crash. It was the face of a black woman. Steady eyes, a reassuring voice. "You're okay. I've got you." He didn't know who she was, but the warmth of her hands pulling him from the wreck lingered. "Who was she?" Ethan rasped, voice hoarse. The nurse looked at him, puzzled. "We don't know. She left before anyone could ask." Ethan gripped the bedsheet, a new resolve forming. He wasn't the type to owe anyone, and this woman hadn't just saved his life. She had given him hope on the darkest day he'd ever known. He called Olivia his loyal assistant when he was moved to recovery. "Find her," he commanded, voice firm. "I need to know who she is." Olivia, a sharp-witted woman with neatly tied red hair, didn't ask questions. Within 48 hours, she returned with a thin dossier. Her name is Amara Johnson, 35, a high school teacher on the South Side. She grew up in the projects, put herself through college, and ran a community center for teens. No criminal record, no debts. Just a regular person by all accounts. Olivia paused, eyeing Ethan. "Why do you care so much?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He flipped through the file, stopping at a photo of Amara smiling at her community center surrounded by kids. There was something about her strength, compassion that he couldn't look away from. "She saved me," he said. "I need to thank her. Set up a meeting." But deep down, Ethan knew it wasn't just gratitude. His life, once measured by money and control, now felt hollow. He couldn't forget Amara's eyes as she saw through him, not as billionaire Ethan Caldwell, but as a man drowning in despair. Somewhere in that fateful rainstorm, an invisible thread had bound them. Meanwhile, in her small Southside apartment, Amara sat by the window watching the rain continue to fall. She didn't know who the man she rescued was, but the events of that night made her reflect on her own life. She was pregnant with twins, a secret she hadn't shared with anyone, the result of a short-lived relationship that had ended. The fear of becoming a single mother in a neighborhood riddled with danger weighed heavily on her. But when she thought about the man in the car, about the moment she held his hand, she felt a strange light. "I did the right thing," she whispered, touching her belly. "And I'll keep doing the right thing." She had no idea that across the city, Ethan Caldwell was planning to step into her life, bringing with him both the light and shadows of the world he came from. In the luxurious hospital room at Chicago Presbyterian, Ethan Caldwell lay on the bed, the dim light from the window casting shadows across his face, still bruised from the accident. The physical pain was nothing compared to the storm raging inside him. The word infertile still echoed, but now it intertwined with another image, the face of the woman who had pulled him out of the burning car. Her deep brown eyes and calming voice in the rain were like a small flame pushing back his darkness. He didn't know her name, but the warmth of her hand dragging him from death's grasp haunted him. "I have to find her," Ethan murmured, gripping his phone. Ethan's assistant, Olivia Bennett, entered the room in her usual professional air. Her red hair was tied up, and she held an iPad and a cup of coffee, the only thing keeping her awake after 48 hours of nonstop work. "Are you sure about this, Ethan?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "You just survived a crash. The doctors said you need rest. Why go through the trouble of finding a stranger?" Ethan looked at her, his gaze resolute. "She's not a stranger. She saved my life, and I don't like owing anyone." Olivia shrugged, well aware of her boss's stubbornness. "All right, I'll dig deeper, but don't expect much." She vanished like a ghost. While Ethan remained confined to the hospital, Amara Johnson returned to her routine on the South Side. Her small apartment on the third floor of an aging building was where she found peace among walls lined with books and family photos. A faded picture sat on her table, her mother Grace smiling beside a younger version of herself, her daily source of strength. Grace had once dreamed of opening a free school for underprivileged children, but cancer had taken her too soon. Amara, only 12 when her mother died, had vowed to carry on her legacy. She worked tirelessly, from teaching to managing a community center where she led tutoring sessions and mentored teens to steer them away from violence and drugs. But tonight, Amara couldn't focus. She sat by the window, her hand resting on her stomach, feeling the slight movement of the twins she carried. The pregnancy had been a surprise, the result of a brief relationship with a man named Marcus, who disappeared the moment she told him. "I'm not ready to be a father," he'd said before walking out. Amara didn't blame him. She was used to facing hardship alone, but the fear of raising children alone in a troubled neighborhood kept her up. The image of the man in the crash flashed in her mind. Who was he? Why did his blue eyes, clouded by pain, make her feel an inexplicable connection? She shook her head, telling herself it was just adrenaline. "You've got enough on your plate." "Amara," she whispered, turning off the light. On the other side of the city, Olivia was working like a detective. She contacted the police, reviewed traffic camera footage, and even interviewed a firefighter. Slowly, a picture of Amara emerged. The next morning, Olivia returned to the hospital and laid a thin folder on the table beside Ethan. Amara Johnson, 35 years old, is a literature teacher at Englewood High School. She began her voice steady. Grew up in the projects. Lost her mother at 12. Father disappeared. She got herself into Northwestern on scholarship. Now runs a community center for at-risk youth. No criminal record, no debts. A decent person by all accounts. Olivia paused, handing Ethan a printed photo from the community center's Instagram. Amara stood among a group of students, beaming, her eyes filled with hope. Ethan held the photo, his heart beating a little faster. There was something about Amara, her strength, her compassion, that he couldn't look away from. "She didn't just save me," he said quietly. "She's different." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Different how? You mean different from the women at the golf club?" Ethan didn't reply, but a faint smile touched his lips. He thought of the high society types. Fake smiles, handshakes for profit. Even in a few lines of description, Amara seemed to belong to another world, where kindness didn't come with a price. "There's one issue," Olivia continued, her tone cautious. "She lives in South Side, not exactly the safest neighborhood. If you want to meet her, I'd advise caution. And—" she hesitated. "There are rumors she's pregnant. No details, but it could complicate things." Ethan frowned, but not in judgment. He felt a deep curiosity, like Amara was a puzzle he needed to solve. "Set up a meeting," he ordered. "I want to thank her. In person." Olivia nodded. The concern lingered. Ethan Caldwell wasn't easily moved, but how he looked at Amara's photo troubled her. "You're sure, Ethan? She's not like the people you usually deal with?" Ethan met her gaze, eyes steady. "I don't care. Find her. I need to meet her." Meanwhile, Amara was leading a creative writing class at the community center. She encouraged the students to write about their dreams, but her mind was adrift. One student, Jamal, 15, noticed her distraction. "Ms. Amara, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Amara smiled, waving him off. "I'm fine, Jamal. Just a little tired." But the truth was, she couldn't stop thinking about the accident. She wondered how the man was doing, if he'd survived. She had no idea Ethan Caldwell was preparing to enter her life across the city, bringing opportunities and challenges she could never have imagined. At the same time, a shadow lingered outside the community center, watching Amara through the window. It was Marcus, the father of the unborn twins. He had seen the news about the accident, and a thought struck him: if the man Amara saved were wealthy, there might be a chance to profit. He smiled, unaware that his decision would drag Amara and Ethan into a dangerous spiral. The warm yellow light from Mama's Kitchen, a small eatery in South Side Chicago, spilled onto the sidewalk, mingling with the scent of toasted bread and the cheerful laughter of regular patrons. Amara Johnson pushed open the door, her simple blue dress hugging her figure, her curly hair tied up, revealing a radiant yet slightly anxious face. She had received a strange message from someone claiming to be the assistant of the man she saved in the accident. After a week of internal struggle, Amara agreed to meet, though she wasn't sure what to expect. "It's just a thank you, Amara," she told herself, but her heart raced at the thought of the man's deep blue eyes from that night. Ethan Caldwell sat stiffly in the diner's corner, his expensive gray suit making him stand out among the rustic wooden tables. He had never set foot in a place like this. No linen tablecloths, no $100 wines. Olivia, his assistant, had warned him, "South Side isn't your playground, Ethan. Be careful." But Ethan ignored her. He needed to see Amara to thank her and understand why she haunted his thoughts. When Amara entered, Ethan stood up abruptly, nearly spilling his water. "Ms. Johnson?" he asked, his voice slightly trembling, a stark contrast to the usual confidence of a billionaire. Amara nodded, offering a polite but cautious smile. "You're the man from the car, right?" She sat across from him, hands clasped tightly on the table to hide her tension. Ethan looked at her, searching for words. "I'm Ethan Caldwell. I owe you my life." Amara shrugged, her eyes showing a hint of embarrassment. "I just did the right thing. Anyone would have." But Ethan shook his head. "No, not everyone would run into flames to save a stranger. I need to thank you properly." The conversation began awkwardly. Ethan, used to cold negotiations, didn't know how to break the invisible wall between them. Amara, though friendly, kept her distance, aware of the differences between her world, filled with simple dreams and harsh realities, and his, where money seemed to solve everything. But then, when the waiter brought out a plate of hot cornbread, Amara smiled, recalling the first time her mother taught her to make it. "My mom used to say, 'Amara, food is how we connect.' I guess she was right." Ethan smiled, feeling at ease for the first time in days. "Your mother sounds like a wonderful person." Amara nodded, her eyes reflecting a hint of sadness. "She passed away when I was 12, cancer. But she left me a dream, to build a place for kids in this neighborhood, so that they could have better chances." She spoke about the community center, and students like Jamal, who had nearly joined a gang, but now dreamed of becoming an engineer. Ethan listened, captivated by the passion in her voice. He had never met anyone like Amara. No ulterior motives, no demands, just someone living to help others. She was a breath of fresh air compared to the people in his circle. Suddenly, Amara took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, slightly trembling. I'm pregnant. Twins. I don't know if you've heard rumors, but I want you to hear it from me." She looked straight into Ethan's eyes, ready to face any judgment. Ethan blinked, surprised, but not shocked. He felt a strange respect. "That's wonderful, Amara," he said sincerely. "But it must be tough, right?" Amara gave a faint smile, surprised by his reaction. "Yes, it's not easy. The children's father. He's no longer in the picture. It's just me." HorseGallery.com +2 Wikipedia +2 Wikipedia +2. Ethan nodded, a familiar pain surfacing. He thought about his infertility, about his shattered dream of a family. "I know what it's like to be alone," he said quietly. I can't have children. I just found out last week. It changes everything." Amara looked at him, her gaze softening. She hadn't expected vulnerability from someone like Ethan, a billionaire who seemed to have it all. "I'm sorry," she said. "But you can still create a legacy differently." Her simple yet profound words touched a part of Ethan he had never acknowledged. The atmosphere between them grew lighter. They shared more stories. Ethan spoke of the pressure from his late father and Amara laughed, recalling times her students played pranks on her. For the first time, Ethan felt he didn't need to be Ethan Caldwell Billionaire. With Amara, he was just a man, and that made him want to know her more. But the moment was interrupted when a man entered the diner, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Marcus, the father of the unborn twins, stood at the counter pretending to order, but watching Amara. He had been following her since the accident, having heard about the rich man she saved. Marcus smirked, thinking about how to exploit the situation. Amara didn't see him, but she felt something was off, like a shadow had passed. Outside, a group of reporters began to gather, cameras flashing. Someone in the diner had recognized Ethan and posted online, "Billionaire Ethan Caldwell spotted in South Side with a mysterious woman." The rumor spread quickly, and as Ethan and Amara left the diner, the blinding flashes startled Amara. "What's going on?" she whispered, panicked. Ethan took her hand, his voice reassuring. "I'm sorry. This is my world, but I'll protect you." Amara pulled her hand back, her eyes filled with doubt. "I don't need protection, Ethan. I want a normal life." As they parted ways, Ethan felt a strong urge to thank Amara, be with her, and understand her. Though drawn to his sincerity, Amara couldn't shake off her worries. She knew this meeting could change everything, and not always for the better. In the shadows, Marcus watched his hand gripping his phone, ready to make his move. The morning sunlight streamed through the window of Amara Johnson's modest Southside apartment, illuminating the photo of her mother on the table. But Amara's mind was far from at peace. After meeting Ethan Caldwell at Mama's kitchen the previous night, the images of paparazzi flashes and the social media headline, "Billionaire Ethan Caldwell's secret date in South Side," kept her tossing and turning. She wasn't accustomed to such attention, and she certainly didn't want her students or colleagues at the community center to see her as the mysterious woman in a billionaire's life. Placing her hand on her belly, she felt the twins move gently. "I just want my children to be safe," she whispered, but the fear of a world encroaching upon her life grew stronger. A few blocks away, Ethan sat in his office at Caldwell Enterprises, having just returned from his recovery. The computer screen before him was filled with articles about the evening at Mama's kitchen. Some labeled Amara an opportunist, while others mocked him for lowering himself. Ethan clenched his fists, angered by how the media distorted the story. He didn't care about public opinion. He was used to it. But the thought of Amara being hurt was unbearable. "Olivia," he called his assistant over the phone, "find a way to suppress these articles. I don't want her name dragged into this mess." Before Olivia could respond, the office door swung open. Victoria Caldwell, Ethan's sister, entered with an authoritative demeanor, dressed in an expensive business suit. Her blonde hair was tightly pulled back, and her eyes were icy. Victoria had been the guardian of the Caldwell family's reputation since their father's passing. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said coldly. She tossed a folder of photos onto the desk, pictures of Ethan and Amara, leaving Mama's kitchen clearly taken by a paparazzo. "What are you doing with her? A teacher from the South Side. Have you lost your mind?" Ethan looked at his sister, trying to control his anger. "Her name is Amara, and she saved my life. You have no right to judge." But Victoria was relentless. She sat down, arms crossed, her voice tinged with sarcasm. "Saved your life, or saw an opportunity? She's pregnant, Ethan. The rumors are everywhere. What does she want? Money. A ticket into high society. Do you think the Caldwell family will let someone like her tarnish our name?" Victoria's words cut deep, not only because they insult Amara, but also because they echo memories of their father, who always prioritized reputation above all. Meanwhile, At Englewood High School, Amara faced pressure from another direction. A parent. Mrs. Carter pulled her aside in the hallway after class. "Ms. Johnson, I heard about you, and that billionaire," she said, her tone filled with suspicion. "I don't want my child taught by someone under media scrutiny. It affects the kids." Amara tried to remain calm, though her heart sank. "Mrs. Carter, I'm still the dedicated teacher I've always been. My personal life doesn't interfere with the classroom." But Mrs. Carter shook her head and left Amara feeling isolated. She began to question whether meeting Ethan had been a mistake. Back at Caldwell Enterprises, the argument between Ethan and Victoria intensified. "You don't understand," Ethan said, raising his voice. "Amara isn't a gold digger. She's more genuine than anyone in our fake world." Victoria sneered. "Genuine? Then let me see how genuine she is." Before Ethan could react, Victoria left phone already in hand. Ethan felt bad, but didn't anticipate how far his sister would go. That afternoon, Amara was organizing materials at the community center when the doorbell rang. A well-dressed woman stood before her. "Ms. Johnson." "I'm Victoria Caldwell," the woman said coldly. Amara frowned her guard up. "What do you want?" Victoria smiled, but her eyes were devoid of warmth. "I want to talk about my brother and your future." She pulled a check from her purse and slid it across the table. $1 million. Enough for you to start over, raise your children, or pursue any dream you have. Just stay away from Ethan. Amara looked at the check, then met Victoria's gaze. Her heart pounded not because of the money, but because of the insult. She had grown up in poverty and had been looked down upon because of her skin color and her neighborhood, but never had she felt so humiliated. "Who do you think I am?" Amara said, her voice trembling with anger. "I don't need your money. I live with dignity, something you clearly don't understand." She pushed the check back and stood up. "Tell Ethan I want nothing to do with this world anymore." Victoria smirked unfazed. "You'll regret this, Ms. Johnson. Our world doesn't welcome people like you." As Victoria left, Amara sat down, her hands shaking. She thought about Ethan, the sincerity in his eyes the moment he opened up about his infertility. But now she wondered if she could ever be part of his world, where she was seen as a threat. News of the confrontation reached Ethan through Olivia, who had overheard Victoria's call. Ethan rushed to the community center, his heart pounding. He found Amara packing up, her eyes filled with hurt. "Amara." "I'm sorry," he said urgently. "I didn't know my sister would do that." She was wrong, completely wrong. Amara looked at him, tears glistening. "It's not your fault, Ethan. But your sister was right. We come from two different worlds. I'm not sure I belong in yours." Ethan stepped forward, taking her hand, letting his emotions guide him for the first time. "I don't want you to belong to that world. I want us to create our world." Amara looked into his eyes, seeing his sincerity and her fears. She pulled her hand back, her voice soft but firm. "I need time, Ethan, to think." As Ethan left the south side, sky turned gray. Amara stood alone, her hand on her belly, feeling the twins as a reminder of her strength. But in the shadows, another pair of eyes watched Marcus, the father of her unborn children, holding a phone recording the entire confrontation between Amara and Victoria. He smiled, knowing this incident would be a weapon to exploit Amara and Ethan. The sky over Chicago turned shades of amber and gold as the sun set, casting a gentle glow over the small park on the south side. Amara Johnson sat on a wooden bench, holding a book, though her gaze was distant. The confrontation with Victoria Caldwell 3 days ago still haunted her. Victoria's insult, "Someone like you," was not just a slap to her pride. It resurfaced old wounds, the judgmental looks she received walking into elite college classrooms, the whispers about the girl from the ghetto. Amara placed a hand on her belly, feeling the twins stir, as if reminding her to stay strong. But she couldn't help wondering if she could truly let Ethan Caldwell, with all the complexity of his world, into her life. A few blocks away, Ethan drove his black SUV through the narrow streets of South Side, his heart set on a purpose. After Amara asked for time, he respected her wish, but he couldn't stop thinking about her radiant smile, and her voice's passion when she spoke about her students. He knew he had exposed her to the harsh line of public scrutiny and his family, and wanted to make it right. In the trunk of his car, he carried a small gift, a box of prenatal nutrition supplies, and a parenting guide, not flashy, but enough to show he cared. "Take it slow, Ethan," he told himself, though his heart beat faster at the thought of seeing her again. At the park, Amara looked up startled to see Ethan approaching, dressed more casually this time, in a blue shirt and jeans, a stark contrast to his stiff gray suit from before. "Ethan," she asked, a note of surprise in her voice. "What are you doing here?" Ethan smiled and sat beside her, keeping just enough distance to make her comfortable. I wanted to apologize. Again. And I brought this." He handed her the gift box, his voice unsure. "Not to pressure you. I want to help if you'll let me." Amara looked at the box, then into Ethan's eyes. Something about him, his sincerity, his awkwardness, rare in a man of power, softened her. "Thank you," she said, opening the box, a faint smile crossing her face when she saw the guidebook. "You did your research, Caldwell." Ethan chuckled, relieved. "I had to Google it. I'm no expert in these things." At that moment, amid birdsong and the sounds of children playing, they found a rare ease. Their conversation flowed more naturally. Amara spoke of her childhood reading with her mother under dim light, dreaming of a better future. "My mom always said, 'Amara, you don't have to be rich, but you must live purposefully.' I try to do that every day." Ethan listened, captivated by her resilience. He shared the pressure he endured from his father and the years spent building Caldwell Enterprises to prove himself only to feel empty. "Then I found out I couldn't have children," he said, voice low. "It felt like losing my reason to live. Until I met you." Amara looked at him, her gaze softening. She wasn't used to vulnerability from a man like Ethan. "I'm scared too, Ethan," she admitted, opening up for the first time. "Being a single mom here isn't easy. I'm afraid I won't be enough for my kids to grow up in a world of judgment." Ethan nodded, gripping the edge of the bench. "You don't have to do it alone, Amara. If you want, I'll be here." Amara smiled, though her eyes held caution. "It's easy to say that, but your world, it doesn't welcome people like me." Their moment was interrupted as Jamal, one of Amara's students, ran up, his face lit with excitement. "Miss Amara, did you see me throw that ball? It was awesome." Amara laughed, ruffling his hair. "Nice job, Jamal. Let's keep practicing tomorrow." Jamal looked curiously at Ethan. "Who's he?" "Your boyfriend." Amara blushed and shook her head. "Just a friend, Jamal. Go play." Ethan laughed, charmed by the boy's innocence. "Kid's got spirit," he said as Jamal ran off. Amara nodded, eyes warm. "He almost dropped out once. Now he wants to be an engineer. Kids like Jamal are why I don't give up." Ethan felt a deep sense of respect. He stood and pointed to the basketball court. "Teach me to throw a ball. I bet you're better than me." Amara raised a brow and burst out laughing. "Careful, billionaire. I don't go easy." They played, their laughter echoing, and for the first time, Amara didn't see Ethan as a stranger from an elite world. He was someone she could trust. But the joy didn't last. As they left the park, a black car parked nearby lowered its window. Inside, sat Marcus, the unborn twins' father, watching from a distance, his eyes cold. He had gathered enough dirt from Amara's clash with Victoria, but now he saw an even bigger opportunity. Ethan Caldwell, a billionaire, drawn to Amara. Marcus smirked and dialed an old friend in the tabloid industry. "I've got a juicy one," he said, "about a billionaire and a pregnant schoolteacher. Want the exclusive?" At the same time, at the community center, an older woman, Ms. Lena, who had once worked with Amara's mother, pulled her aside after class. "Amara, I saw you in the papers," she said, voice full of concern. "That billionaire, is he good to you? Be careful, child. Rich folks bring trouble." Amara nodded, her heart heavy. "I know, Ms. Lena. I'm trying to figure him out." Ms. Lena gripped her hand, her gaze firm. "You're strong, but don't let your heart blind you. Remember what your mother taught you." That night, Amara lay in bed thinking about Ethan. His smile, the way he clumsily threw the ball to make her laugh. She wanted to believe in him, but Ms. Lena's words and Victoria's shadow lingered. She placed a hand on her belly and whispered to her babies, "I'll protect you both no matter what." Across town, Ethan stood by the window of his penthouse, holding the parenting guide he had given Amara. He knew he was stepping into unfamiliar territory, but for the first time, he didn't want to control everything. He wanted to be by Amara's side, even if it meant facing the world. Night fell over the south side, the dim streetlights casting shadows over graffiti-covered walls. Amara Johnson sat in her small apartment, her phone vibrating incessantly with social media notifications. A tabloid article leaked by Marcus, the father of her unborn twins, had gone viral like wildfire. Billionaire Ethan Caldwell, smitten with pregnant teacher from the slums. The article included stolen photos of Amara and Ethan at the park, alongside offensive captions, "Gold digger" or "modern-day Cinderella." Amara clenched her phone, tears falling silently. She didn't care about the rumors aimed at her, but the thought of students at the community center, kids like Jamal, reading such things made her heartache. Across downtown Chicago, Ethan Caldwell stood in his luxurious penthouse, eyes blazing as he read the article. He had dealt with the media his entire life, but this time the attacks were aimed at Amara, and he felt powerless. "Olivia," he called, his voice sharp. Olivia Bennett. His assistant appeared immediately, iPad in hand. "I've contacted the PR team," she said. "They're trying to suppress the article, but it's spreading too fast. Someone deliberately leaked this." Ethan slammed his fist on the table, thinking of Victoria. "My sister Olivia," shook her head. "Not her. Seems to be someone else. Someone who knows a lot about Amara." Ethan frowned, a bad feeling rising in his chest. At the community center, the social fallout was becoming apparent. When Amara arrived to teach her creative writing class the next morning, she noticed wary glances from some parents. One mother, Mrs. Harris, pulled her aside, speaking in a low but sharp voice. "Ms. Johnson, I respect your work, but it's distracting the kids. My son asked if you sold yourself to a billionaire." Amara felt her face burn, but kept her voice calm. "Mrs. Harris, I'm still the same teacher I've always been. The media doesn't speak the truth. I'm here for the children just like I've always been." Mrs. Harris nodded, but the suspicion in her eyes made Amara feel betrayed by the very community she had served so tirelessly. Meanwhile, Ethan decided to act. He couldn't let Amara face this storm alone. He drove to Southside, not with gifts or apologies this time, but with the intent to publicly stand by her. When he arrived at the community center, he saw Amara talking to Jamal and trying to explain the rumors. "Ms. Amara, I don't believe what they say," Jamal said firmly. "You're the best person I know." Amara smiled, her eyes red. Ethan walked in, startling them both. "Amara," he said, voice steady but heavy, "I have a way to stop this." Amara frowned and stood up. Ethan, you can't fix everything with money or power. This is my community. I don't want it turned into a circus. Ethan shook his head, his eyes resolute. No money. I want to tell the truth. He proposed a press conference at the community center where he would publicly defend Amara and clarify their relationship. Amara hesitated, knowing this would pull her deeper into Ethan's world, but she was also tired of being misunderstood. All right, she said softly, but I'll speak. This is my story. The press conference took place that afternoon in the small courtyard of the community center. Cameras and microphones were set up, drawing both journalists and curious onlookers. Ethan stood beside Amara, but let her lead. Amara, dressed in a simple white blouse, stepped up to the podium, eyes steady, though her heart pounded. I'm Amara Johnson, she began, voice clear. I'm a teacher. I run this center, and I'm the one who pulled a man from a burning car. I'm not a gold digger. I'm not Cinderella. I'm a woman trying to live by her values, and I will not let anyone define me with lies. The crowd was silent. Then a few clapped Jamal and Mrs. Lena, who once worked with her mother. Ethan stepped forward, speaking briefly. Amara is the most honorable woman I know. I'm here to support her, not to control her. His words were simple, but they stunned Amara. She looked at him, feeling a warmth amid the chaos. But not everyone was convinced. A reporter raised a hand, voice sharp. Ms. Johnson, you're pregnant. Is it true you're using your relationship with Mr. Caldwell to secure your children's future? Amara froze, but before responding, a voice rang out from the crowd. She doesn't need anyone to do that. It was Mrs. Lena, her eyes ablaze. I've known Amara since she was a child. She's overcome everything alone and raised those children better than anyone. The crowd murmured, and Amara smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Mrs. Lena's support was like a gust of wind clearing her fear. After the press conference, Ethan and Amara sat in the small office of the community center. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan. Thank you, Amara said softly, but I'm still worried. These rumors, they could hurt the kids here. Ethan nodded, his fingers interlaced. I know, but I promise I'll do everything I can to protect you and this center. Amara looked at him, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a distant billionaire, but someone who truly cared. Outside, Marcus stood just meters away, peering through the window. He had hoped the press conference would break Amara, but her resilience and Ethan's protection only fueled his rage. He texted his tabloid contact, dig deeper. Find anything on Caldwell. I want them to pay. He had no idea this move would drag Amara and Ethan into a far more dangerous spiral. That night, Amara returned to her apartment feeling lighter, but still anxious. She opened the parenting journal Ethan had gifted her and read a handwritten line he had inscribed. You're stronger than you think, Amara. She smiled, but her thoughts drifted to her mother, who once said, You'll find people who'll fight beside you, Amara. Could Ethan be one of them? In his penthouse, Ethan looked out at the city, thinking of Amara, her courage, her dignity. He knew he was falling into something far more profound than gratitude, and he was ready to face any storm to be by her side. Drizzle fell over the streets of Chicago, casting a misty veil over the south side. Amara Johnson stepped out of the community center, clutching her coat tightly over her growing belly. At 32 weeks, the twins inside her were becoming more active, but today a sudden sharp pain made her stop in her tracks. She took a deep breath, telling herself it was just Braxton Hicks, but when the pain came again, sharper, more urgent, Amara began to panic. No, not yet, she whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for her phone. She called Mrs. Lena, the only person she trusted at that moment. Mrs. Lena, I think something's wrong. A few blocks away, Ethan Caldwell was in a board meeting at Caldwell Enterprises discussing a multi-million-dollar acquisition deal. But his mind was elsewhere on Amara. Her smile during the press conference, her courage in the face of the crowd. He had promised to protect her, yet the helplessness he felt in the wake of the media storm still haunted him. When his phone buzzed, he nearly ignored it, but the name Amara on the screen tightened his chest. He excused himself from the room, stepped into the hallway and answered. A hurried female voice came through Mr. Caldwell. I'm a nurse at Chicago Presbyterian. Ms. Johnson has just been brought in. She's gone into early labor. The world blurred around Ethan. Early? She's not due yet. He nearly shouted, his voice trembling. The nurse tried to reassure him. We're doing everything we can. She asked for you. Ethan didn't wait. He ran to the garage, jumped in his car, and sped through the busy streets, his heart pounding. He remembered what Amara had once told him. I'm scared I won't be enough for my kids. The thought of losing her, or the babies, made his hands tighten around the wheel, tears welling in his eyes. At the hospital, Amara lay in bed, her face contorted in pain. The contractions came quickly, each one tearing through her. She gripped Mrs. Lena's hand, who had arrived immediately, her eyes filled with concern. I'm scared, Mrs. Lena, Amara whispered weakly. What if the babies aren't okay? Mrs. Lena squeezed her hand firmly. Just like your mama. The babies will be fine, and so will you. But Amara couldn't shake the fear. Memories of her mother, who died of illness when Amara was a child, rose like a warning. When Ethan burst into the emergency room, he saw Amara pale, but her eyes lit up when they met him. Ethan, she gasped, reaching for his hand. I'm here, he said, voice hoarse, sitting beside her. You're not alone, Amara, I promise. Her hand clenched his tightly like an anchor in a storm. A doctor entered, voice grave. Ms. Johnson, the babies are coming early, and we need to perform an emergency C-section. We're taking you into surgery now. Amara nodded, tears streaming down her face. Take care of my babies, she whispered to Ethan before being wheeled away. Ethan stood frozen, watching her disappear through the operating room doors. Mrs. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder, her gaze sharp but gentle. You love her, don't you? She asked. Ethan blinked, startled by the question. He had never thought of the word love, but the pain in his chest at the thought of losing Amara answered for him. I'd do anything for her and the babies, he said. Mrs. Lena nodded. Then prove it. She needs you now more than ever. Time crawled in the waiting room. Ethan paced restlessly, every tick of the clock like a hammer blow. He thought of Amara, her bravery facing the media, her devotion to her students. He thought of the babies and lives he hadn't yet met, but already felt bonded to. Let them be okay, he whispered, unsure who he was praying to. Mrs. Lena sat nearby, softly humming an old lullaby, as if sending strength to Amara. Finally, after 2 tense hours, a doctor emerged, pulling off his mask. Mr. Caldwell, Ms. Johnson is stable. We completed the operation successfully. She gave birth to 2 girls, but they're tiny, just over 1 kilogram each. They're in the NICU and we must monitor them closely. Ethan exhaled, relief flooding him, but worry lingered. Can I see Amara and the babies? The doctor nodded. Ms. Johnson is recovering. You can see the girls through the glass, but they'll need time. Ethan was led to the recovery room where Amara lay weak but awake. She smiled when she saw him despite her tired eyes. Are they okay? She asked, voice hoarse. Ethan took her hand and nodded. They're fighters, just like their mother. You did it, Amara. She burst into tears, overwhelmed with relief. I want to see them, she said. Ethan promised to bring her to the NICU as soon as she was strong enough. At the NICU, Ethan stood before two small incubators. His heart clenched as he saw the twin girls Zoe and Maya names Amara had chosen. They were tiny, their pink skin wrapped in tubes and wires. Zoe, the smaller one, appeared to be sleeping, but Maya, slightly larger, opened her eyes. Little brown eyes, just like Amara's. Ethan placed a hand on the glass, tears falling freely. "Hello, Zoe. Hello, Maya," he whispered. "Daddy's here." Outside, Marcus stood beyond the hospital window, watching the NICU. Thanks to a hospital contact, he had been tracking Amara since she was admitted. Seeing Ethan by the babies, Marcus smirked. "My kid's and a billionaire playing daddy," he muttered. He snapped a photo and sent it to his media contact with a caption, "Caldwell claiming another man's babies." He knew the image would cause a storm and planned to make Ethan pay dearly for it. Back in the recovery room, Amara clutched Ethan's hand, feeling a rare sense of safety. "Thank you for being here," she said. Ethan smiled, brushing away her tears. "I'll always be here, Amara, for you and the girls." But neither knew that a new storm was gathering outside, ready to test the strength of their love and trust. The dim glow of medical monitors illuminated the tiny incubators inside the neonatal intensive care unit NICU at Chicago Presbyterian. The steady beeping of machines blended with the soft breathing of two little girls, Zoe and Maya, tiny warriors fighting for their lives day by day. Amara Johnson, still weak after the emergency C-section, sat in a wheelchair beside Zoe's incubator, her eyes filled with love and worry. She touched the glass and whispered, "You're so strong, Zoe. Mommy's here." A few steps away, Ethan Caldwell stood by Maya's incubator. His deep blue eyes locked on the baby girl, as if he could thrust into her through his gaze. The first day in the NICU was a trial by fire. Amara, though exhausted, insisted on seeing her daughters the moment doctors allowed. She thought of her mother Grace, who used to sing lullabies to her through nights of illness, and now she wanted her daughters to grow strong, just like her. "What did your mother teach you?" Amara Mislina, who had once worked with Grace, had asked. "Live truthfully, love fully, and never let anyone define you." Those words echoed in Amara's mind as she gazed at Zoe and Maya, who were so tiny that she feared touching them might hurt them. Ethan, though not their biological father, never left the NICU. He learned to read monitor readings and noted every minor change, Maya's heart rate and Zoe's oxygen levels. "I'm not going anywhere," he told Amara firmly. "Not until the girls are okay." Amara looked at him, gratitude mixing with something unfamiliar. Ethan, who once ran a financial empire from a glass tower, now wore a simple t-shirt, his hair tousled, reading children's books aloud to Maya in a clumsy voice. "She seems to like Little Bear the most," he said, pointing at the book he'd bought from the hospital gift shop. Amara smiled for the first time in days. "Are you sure? Maybe she likes your voice?" Ethan chuckled, the warmth in his eyes making her feel safe. They shared precious moments beside their daughters. Amara told Ethan about her mother's dream, opening a free school for underprivileged children in the South Side. "I want the girls to grow up knowing they can be anything," she said, trembling. "Just like my mom taught me." Ethan nodded, thinking about his father, a man who measured worth in wealth. "I used to think legacy meant building an empire," he admitted. "But now, looking at Zoe and Maya, I know true legacy is love." Amara took his hand, not pulling away this time. "We'll give them that, Ethan. Together." Ms. Lena came to visit, bringing hand-knitted blankets for the babies. "They look just like you did when you were born," she said, eyes glistening. Tiny, but mighty. She spoke of Grace, Amara's mother, who once stood up to a landlord to protect her neighbors. "You carry her spirit," Ms. Lena said, tearing Amara up. She then turned to Ethan, her gaze sharp but kind. "And you, Mr. Billionaire, what will you do for this family?" Ethan didn't hesitate. Everything I have, Ms. Lena. I'll protect them. But peace was fleeting. Outside the hospital, Marcus, the biological father of Zoe and Maya, continued scheming. The photo he had sent to the press, Ethan by the incubators with the caption, "Caldwell claims another man's children," had gone viral. A tabloid ran a piece, "Billionaire gives up legacy for inner-city teachers' twins." The rumor mill exploded with cruel comments about Amara. She trapped him with those kids. Ethan, furious, tried to shield Amara from the story so she could focus on the girls. But Ms. Lena, who kept up with the news, found out and told Amara. "Don't let them break you," she warned. Amara nodded, but her heart was heavy. She didn't want her daughters to grow up in the shadow of prejudice. Inside the NICU, Ethan and Amara celebrated every small milestone. The day Zoe opened her eyes, Amara cried, hugging Ethan. She looked at me. Ethan. The day Maya wrapped her fingers around his. Ethan felt his heart melt. "She's strong," he whispered, voice choked. A nurse named Grace, sharing the name of Amara's mother, became their confidant. "They can feel your love," she said with a smile. "They're fighters because they have parents like you." Amara looked at Ethan, and for the first time silently called him father. "Thank you, Ethan," she said aloud, "for being their dad." But Marcus wasn't finished. He contacted a lawyer planning to demand custody, not out of love for the twins, but to extort Ethan. If Caldwell wants those kids, he'll pay, he told the lawyer, eyes cold. He sent an anonymous text to Ethan. $5 million, or I take this to court. Ethan received the message while humming a lullaby to Zoe. He froze. He didn't tell Amara, but called Olivia, not wanting to worry her. "Find out who sent this," he ordered. "I won't let anyone touch my family." That night, Amara and Ethan sat by the incubators, the soft light from machines surrounding them. Amara sang a lullaby. Her mother once sang, her voice gentle, "Sleep, my love, beneath the moonlight." Ethan listened, feeling a peace he'd never known. He looked at Zoe and Maya, then at Amara, and silently vowed, "I'll protect you all, no matter the cost." Amara, as if sensing his thoughts, gripped his hand tighter. "We're a family, Ethan," she said. "Nothing can break that." But outside, Marcus stood near the hospital window, watching the NICU. He knew time was running out. If Ethan didn't pay, he'd unleash everything from Amara's past to lies he planned to fabricate. He smiled, thinking of the payday ahead. He didn't know that a family was being built inside the NICU, stronger than any scheme he could conjure. Dawn broke through the NICU windows at Chicago Presbyterian, casting a pale light over the two small incubators where Zoe and Maya lay. Amara Johnson stood beside Zoe's incubator, softly singing a lullaby. Her mother once sang, her voice trembling with exhaustion, yet filled with love. Zoe, the smaller of the two, had begun breathing better, while Maya, the stronger one, occasionally opened her eyes to look at her mother. Amara smiled, but her heart was heavy. She knew rumors about her and Ethan were still spreading, and although the press conference had somewhat restored her reputation, the whispers still cut into her pride like a knife. Ethan Caldwell sat beside Maya's incubator, reading Little Bear in a clumsy yet warm voice. He had become an indispensable presence in the NICU, leaving behind meetings at Caldwell Enterprises to be with Amara and the babies. He looked at Amara, sensing the worry in her eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked, setting the book down. Amara nodded, but her gaze drifted. I want the girls out of here, home, living a normal life." Ethan took her hand gently. "We'll get there, Amara. I promise." But peace was short-lived. As Amara and Ethan sipped coffee in the waiting room that morning, a stranger walked in wearing a cheap suit, but exuding confidence. He handed over an envelope. "Ms. Johnson, I'm the attorney for Marcus Reed. This is a petition for custody. Amara froze, her hands trembling as she opened the envelope. Inside, documents declared that Marcus, the biological father of Zoe and Maya, was seeking custody of the twins, accusing Amara of being financially incapable and living in an unsafe environment. Ethan stood up abruptly, his voice sharp. "What is this? He has no right." Amara felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus, the man who had abandoned her upon learning of her pregnancy, who had never inquired about the babies, now reappeared like a ghost from the past. She recalled the painful days after he left, facing pregnancy alone, working tirelessly to keep the community center running. "He doesn't want the girls," she said, her voice shaking. "He wants money or revenge." Ethan squeezed her hand, his eyes blazing. "He won't touch Zoe and Maya. I'll hire the best lawyer." But the situation escalated quickly. With the help of a tabloid reporter, Marcus released a new article, "Biological Father Battles Billionaire Caldwell for Custody." The piece portrayed Marcus as a father stripped of his rights, while insinuating that Amara was exploiting Ethan to sell the babies. Rumors spread rapidly, and at the community center some parents began withdrawing their children from Amara's class. Mrs. Harris, who had previously doubted her, publicly told other parents, "I don't trust Ms. Johnson anymore. Who knows what she's doing with those kids?" Amara, hearing this from Jamal, felt her heart shatter. "I'm not selling my children," she screamed in her office, tears streaming down her face. Jamal hugged her tightly, his voice firm. "I know you're not, Ms. Amara. Don't let them win." Meanwhile, Ethan acted swiftly. He contacted Olivia, instructing Caldwell Enterprises' legal team to investigate. "Find everything on Marcus Reed," he ordered. "His past debts, anything to discredit him." Olivia, though concerned, nodded. "Ethan, you're going too far. If this goes to court, the media will tear you and Amara apart." Ethan looked at her, unwavering. "I don't care about reputation. I care about my family." For the first time, Olivia realized he had changed from a cold CEO to a man willing to sacrifice everything. Despite her heartbreak, Amara refused to let Marcus control her mind. She visited the NICU daily, talking to Zoe and Maya, and sharing her grandmother's dream of a free school in the South Side. "You will grow up strong," she whispered, "and I won't let anyone take you away." Seeing her resilience, Ethan became even more determined. He hired a top custody lawyer, Rachel Nguyen, who was known for winning numerous custody battles. Rachel met with Amara and Ethan, explaining Marcus has a weak legal case, but he's using the media to pressure us. We need to prove Amara and Ethan are fit mothers. You need to clarify your role with the girls. Rachel's words made Amara and Ethan exchange glances. "My role?" Ethan asked. Rachel smiled. "You act like their father, but legally it's ambiguous. Would you consider adopting them?" Amara blinked, surprised. The thought of Ethan officially becoming Zoe and Maya's father made her heart race. Ethan looked at Amara, his voice deep. "If you agree, Amara, I want to be their father, not just in my heart, but on paper." Amara didn't respond immediately, but her eyes softened. I need to think about it," she said, emotions swirling within her. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his antics. He appeared on a local talk show feigning tears as he spoke about children stolen from him. He mentioned Ethan, insinuating that he bought the babies to salvage his image. The interview divided public opinion. Some supported Marcus as a wronged father, while others like Mrs. Lena were outraged. She visited the NICU and held Amara's hand. "Don't let that bastard scare you," she said. "Your mother fought men like him all her life. So will you." Amara nodded, regaining her strength. "I won't let him win, Mrs. Lena." That night, Amara and Ethan sat beside the incubators. the machines casting shadows on their faces. Amara broke the silence. "Ethan, if you're serious about adopting, I want you to understand what that means. The girls will be yours forever, no matter what happens between us." Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady. "I know, Amara, and I want that more than anything." Amara smiled, tears glistening. "Then, we'll fight together." Marcus stood in the shadows outside the hospital, watching through the NICU window. He received news from his lawyer. Ethan's team dug into his past, uncovering gambling debts and a prior fraud arrest. He clenched his fists, knowing time was running out. "If I can't get the money, I'll destroy both of them," he muttered, planning to unleash a final blow, a fabricated secret about Amara to ruin her utterly. Amara and Ethan held hands inside the NICU, watching Zoe and Maya sleep peacefully. The beeping machines served as a reminder that their battle had only just begun. But for the first time, Amara felt she wasn't alone. "We'll win, won't we?" she asked. Ethan kissed her forehead, his voice resolute. "We'll win, Amara, for Zoe, Maya, and us." Golden sunlight streamed through the ancient oak trees, casting a warm glow over the South Side Community Center. Children's laughter and the scent of sweet pastries filled the air as everyone gathered to celebrate Zoe and Maya's first birthday. Amara Johnson stood in the middle of the yard holding Maya in her arms, her eyes sparkling as she watched the baby giggle, her brown eyes mirroring her mother's. Zoe, held by Mrs. Lena, waved her tiny hands toward the bright balloons. 1 year ago, they were lying in incubators as fragile as a candlelight in the wind. Now they were healthy, the greatest joy in Amara's life. Yet faint anxiety lingered. Marcus, the girl's biological father, remained a lurking shadow, even though his custody case had quieted down thanks to Ethan's legal team. Ethan Caldwell, dressed simply in a blue button-down shirt, stood by the cake table, helping Jamal hang another string of paper flags. He had changed so much since meeting Amara, from a billionaire who knew only contracts and power, to a devoted father willing to do anything for Zoe and Maya. Though not yet legally finalized, his decision to adopt the twins had given his life a deeper meaning for the first time. But today, he carried an even greater mission to propose to Amara. In his pocket was a simple silver ring, unpretentious just like her, and his heart raced every time he thought about it. The party bustled with the presence of the South Side community. Mrs. Lena, beaming, shared stories about Amara's mother, Grace, who used to throw similar gatherings. "You've made her proud, Amara," she said, wiping a tear. Wiping up Satami. Jamal, now Amara's right hand, led a group of kids in a game of tag, drawing giggles from Zoe and Maya. But not everyone was smiling. A few parents still watched Amara with wary eyes, influenced by rumors Marcus had spread. A recent tabloid article, though quickly silenced, had insinuated Amara sold her children to a billionaire. She tried to ignore it, but the pain still burned inside. Ethan noticed the tension in Amara. He touched her shoulder when she stood alone by the cake table. "Are you okay?" he asked, gently. Amara smiled, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. "I just want this day to be perfect for the girls. But those looks, those whispers, they still hurt." Ethan squeezed her hand. "They don't know you, Amara, but I do, and Zoe and Maya do. That's what matters." His simple but heartfelt words made her feel lighter. She looked at him, thinking about all they had endured, from the accident to the NICU, from prejudice to love. When the birthday cake was brought out with Zoe and Maya, 1 year, written in colorful frosting, applause erupted. Amara and Ethan stood side by side, holding the girls and helping them blow out the candles as everyone sang. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and loving eyes, Ethan knew the time had come. He took a deep breath, handed Maya to Mrs. Lena, knelt before Amara, and the crowd fell silent. Amara Johnson, he began, his voice trembling, but clear. You and the girls have changed my life. I used to think legacy meant money and power, but now I know it's love. It's our family. You are the strongest, kindest woman I know. Will you marry me? Amara blinked, tears glistening in her eyes. The crowd held its breath, and Zoe, as if sensing the moment, reached up and touched her mother's cheek. Amara looked at Ethan and saw the sincerity in his eyes, not the billionaire Ethan Caldwell, but the man who had stood by her through every trial. She thought of her mother, who once said, "Find someone who loves you for exactly who you are." She nodded, her voice choked. "Yes, Ethan, I will." Applause erupted. Jamal whistled, and Mrs. Lena wiped away tears, whispering, "Grace is smiling from heaven." But the joyful moment unexpectedly turned when a figure stepped into the yard. Victoria Caldwell, Ethan's sister, appeared in a simpler dress than usual, her expression no longer cold. Amara stiffened, recalling Victoria's past insults. Ethan stepped protectively in front of her, his voice guarded. "What are you doing here?" Victoria raised a hand, her tone softer. "I came to apologize. I was wrong about you, Amara. I see my brother happy. I see the love between you. And I want to be part of that if you'll let me." Amara looked at her, conflicted, but when Zoe smiled at her, she nodded. "For the girls, I'll give you a chance." Victoria smiled and hugged Ethan, and the Caldwell family felt whole for the first time. The party continued with laughter and music, but in the shadows, Marcus watched from a distance. He had come hoping to cause chaos, but seeing the community united and Victoria reconciled, he knew his plan was faltering. Ethan's legal team had uncovered proof of Marcus's fraudulent past, and his lawsuit was now nearly hopeless. But Marcus wasn't giving up. He texted a media contact, "Final leak. Amara was involved in a college scandal. Dig deep." He fabricated the story, hoping to destroy Amara before she and Ethan officially became a family. Amara and Ethan sat on a bench outside, holding Zoe and Maya as the party ended. Moonlight bathed them, and Amara leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "I didn't think I'd say yes," she said, smiling. Ethan kissed her hair. "I didn't think I'd kneel, but I've never been more certain of anything." They watched the girls sleep peacefully, feeling a rare serenity. But neither knew that a new rumor was being planted somewhere, ready to test the love and family they had just begun to build. Morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating the suburban Chicago home where Amara Johnson and Ethan Caldwell had built their nest. Amara, now Ethan's fiancée, made pancakes in the kitchen, softly humming an old lullaby her mother used to sing. Zoe and Maya, now 18 months old, sat in their high chairs giggling as Ethan tried to make silly faces, flour smeared all over his dress shirt. "You're a kitchen disaster, Caldwell," Amara teased, handing him a towel. Ethan laughed heartily and kissed her cheek. "But I'm your lovable disaster, right?" Maya clapped, as if in agreement, making them both laugh. These moments, simple, messy, filled with love, were exactly what Amara had once dreamed of giving her children. A year had passed since Zoe and Maya's first birthday, and life had changed profoundly for Amara and Ethan. They had moved out of downtown Chicago into a spacious yet cozy house where the girls had room to play, and Amara had space to run the scholarship program named after her mother, Grace. The program, partially funded by Ethan, provided scholarships and tutoring for children from the South Side, giving kids like Jamal a chance to pursue their dreams. Amara worked tirelessly, balancing her roles as a mother, a fiancée, and a community activist. Though still managing Caldwell Enterprises remotely, Ethan spent most of his time being a father, learning to change diapers, tell stories, and even losing to Zoe at block stacking. But family life wasn't always peaceful. One morning, As Amara was getting Zoe and Maya ready for the park, she received a message from Mrs. Lena. Check the news, Amara. Something's up again. She opened her phone, her heart sinking at the headline from a tabloid. Amara Johnson, the billionaire's teacher, and her college scandal secret. The article leaked by Marcus falsely claimed that Amara had been expelled from college for dishonest conduct based on forged documents. Though completely unfounded, the rumor spread quickly, and some parents at the community center began raising concerns. "I don't want my child being taught by someone with a shady past," one mother said over the phone, causing Amara to tremble angrily. Hearing the call, Ethan embraced her from behind. "Don't let them hurt you," he said firmly. "We know the truth." Amara turned around, her eyes glistening. "But they don't, Ethan. And these lies, they could damage the program. They could hurt the girls." Ethan tightened his grip. "I've already asked Olivia to investigate. We'll find out who's behind this. I'm betting it's Marcus." Amara nodded, remembering Marcus, who had once tried to blackmail them and now seemed determined to destroy her happiness. "He won't stop," she said quietly. "Not until we stop him." Life went on, filled with both joy and challenges. One afternoon, Ethan tried to make stew for dinner, but ended up burning the pot, and the family had to order pizza instead. Amara laughed until she cried, holding Zoe in her arms. "You need to learn to cook before the wedding." "Caldwell," she teased. Ethan shrugged, holding Maya. "As long as you marry me, I'll keep learning forever." At that moment, between laughter and the smell of something burnt, Amara felt truly happy. But both parents cried when the girls called Daddy for the first time in their sweet, babbling voices. "They chose you, Ethan," Amara whispered, choked with emotion. Ethan kissed her forehead. "And I choose them. Forever." Mrs. Lena came to visit, bringing a gift, 2 little handmade dolls for Zoe and Maya. "They look like you when you were little," she said, looking at Amara. "But you've got a family your mother would be proud of." She told stories about Grace, who had stood up to injustice even in poverty. "You carry her spirit," Mrs. Lena said, making Amara smile. Then she turned to Ethan, her gaze sharp. "Have you kept your promise to protect them?" Billionaire Ethan nodded. "Every single day, Mrs. Lena." But Marcus hadn't given up. After failing in court, he turned to dirtier tactics. He contacted a popular blogger, supplying forged documents about Amara's so-called scandal, hoping to destroy her scholarship program. He knew Ethan was in the process of legally adopting Zoe and Maya, and he aimed to disrupt everything before the paperwork was finalized. One night he sent an anonymous message to Amara: "Leave Caldwell, or the world will know your truth." Reading it while Ethan rocked the girls to sleep, Amara felt a chill. She didn't tell him, not wanting to ruin their fragile happiness, but she decided to confront Marcus one last time. She contacted Rachel Nguyen, Ethan's lawyer, asking her to find evidence that could permanently neutralize Marcus. With Olivia's help, Rachel discovered that Marcus was connected to a new fraud ring and prepared to bring the information to the police. "He won't have another chance to hurt you," Rachel said. Amara nodded, though anxiety still gripped her. She thought of Zoe and Maya, her mother's dream, and Ethan, the man who had become her anchor. "I just want the girls to be safe," she said, trembling. That night, Amara and Ethan lay on the sofa, Zoe and Maya sleeping soundly in their arms. Amara shared her plans to expand the scholarship program, dreaming of a free school as her mother once hoped. Ethan listened, pride shining in his eyes. "You're going to make it happen, Amara, and I'll be here whatever you need." Amara rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a rare peace. "I used to be afraid of your world," she said. "But now, all I want is our world." Ethan kissed her and whispered, "That's the only world I want too." But outside in the darkness, Marcus stood watching through their window. He knew the police were closing in, but he still had one final move, a televised interview, where he would expose Amara. He smiled, unaware that the strength of Ethan and Amara's family had already grown far beyond his web of lies. Brilliant May sunlight poured over the Southside Community Center, where hundreds gathered to witness the launch of the Grace Johnson Scholarship Program. Colorful banners fluttered with the words, "Dreams for the Future," while children ran and laughed, and the scent of freshly baked cookies drifted from the community kitchen. Amara Johnson stood on a small stage, holding Zoe in her arms, her eyes sparkling with pride. Maya, perched on Ethan Caldwell's shoulders, waved her tiny hands toward the crowd, making everyone laugh. A year ago, Amara couldn't have imagined this day a happy family, a scholarship program named after her mother, and a united community. But now, here she stood stronger than ever. In a simple blue shirt, Ethan stood beside Amara, eyes never leaving her. He had once measured success by wealth and power, but looking at Zoe, Maya, and Amara's radiant smile, he knew his true legacy was love. The scholarship program, funded by Caldwell Enterprises and driven by Amara's dedication, had already awarded its first scholarship to Jamal, an engineering student at Northwestern University. "Ms. Amara changed my life," Jamal told the crowd. His voice choked with emotion, prompting Amara to wipe away tears. But the road to this day hadn't been easy. Just 2 weeks earlier, Marcus, the biological father of Zoe and Maya, had made one final move. A televised interview falsely accusing Amara of scholarship fraud during college. He fabricated details backed by forged documents, hoping to destroy the scholarship program and Amara's happiness. The interview caused a stir, making some donors hesitate, leading a few parents at the community center to look at Amara with renewed suspicion. "I don't know if I can trust her anymore," one mother whispered, tightening a knot in Amara's heart. Ethan, upon hearing the news, acted immediately. He summoned his legal team, led by Rachel Nguyen and Olivia, his assistant, who dug deep into Marcus's past. They uncovered his involvement in fraud and an ongoing investigation into money laundering. Rachel contacted the authorities, and just days before the launch, Marcus was arrested in a seedy motel, ending his schemes. The interview was taken down, and a reputable newspaper published a retraction praising Amara as a hero of the South Side. Public support shifted in her favor, and a photo of Amara and Ethan carrying Zoe and Maya in the park went viral, becoming a symbol of love, triumphing over division. Amara stepped up to the podium on stage, her voice clear yet emotional. "This program is named after my mother, Grace Johnson, who dreamed of a world where every child had a chance," she said. "Family isn't just blood who chooses to stand by you and fight for you. I found that family in Ethan, Zoe, Maya, and all of you." The crowd applauded, and Mrs. Lena wiped her eyes while standing in the front row. "Grace is watching you, Amara," she whispered. Ethan joined Amara on stage, taking her hand. "I once thought legacy meant building an empire," he said, his voice steady. "But Amara, Zoe, and Maya taught me that legacy is love. It's dreams like this program. Thank you, Amara, for giving me a family." He leaned down and kissed her before the crowd erupted in cheers. Zoe and Maya, sensing the joy, giggled and clapped, lighting up the stage. Victoria Caldwell, now a cherished part of the family, stood among the crowd holding Jamal, whom she had proudly adopted as a godson. Since her apology at Zoe and Maya's birthday, she had transformed, supporting the scholarship program and becoming a loving aunt to the girls. "I was wrong, but I learned," she told Mrs. Lena, who nodded approvingly. Her presence and the community's support proved the power of forgiveness and unity. But the most touching moment came when Jamal stepped up to receive the inaugural scholarship. "Ms. Amara isn't just a teacher," he said. She's the person who showed me I mattered. This program will change lives, just like she changed mine. Amara hugged Jamal, tears streaming down her face. She looked out at this crowd, familiar faces from the South Side. Some who had once doubted her, but were now applauding and felt her mother's dream coming true. As the ceremony ended, Amara and Ethan led Zoe and Maya to the garden behind the center, where sunflowers, her mother's favorite flower, bloomed brightly. They sat on a bench, the girls playing in the grass, and Amara rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. "We did it, didn't we?" she asked softly. Ethan kissed her forehead. "More than that, Amara. We built a legacy." She smiled, thinking of her mother and the lullabies under the dim lamp. "It's enough, Ethan. Always enough." In the golden glow of dusk, Zoe and Maya ran toward them, wrapping their arms around Amara and Ethan. Their laughter rang out, mingling with bird song, a hymn of love and hope. Marcus, now behind bars, was no longer a threat. The rumors had faded, and the South Side community stood behind Amara, stronger than ever. Amara looked at Ethan, her eyes gleaming. "This is our family," she said. Ethan nodded, holding her and the girls tightly. "And this is our legacy." The story closes with their family in the garden, bathed in the soft hues of sunset. A legacy not of wealth or power, but of shared love, resilience, and dreams. Amara and Ethan, once from different worlds, had built one of their own, a world where Zoe and Maya would grow up knowing that love could overcome anything,